Chapter 1. Another edition on podcasting? A quick Google search on podcasting books demonstrates that there is no shortage of titles. A good number of these books are excellent, each with its own focus, ranging from how to start a podcast, how to market a podcast, how to grow your show, and podcast technology. So, what makes this book stand out? Podcasting Explained 2.0, like everything else in the Explained series, in the first instance aims to demystify. Someone new to podcasting will often view the practice as highly technical, requiring an editing suite, a studio, a professionally trained voice, and more than a bit of money to get and keep the operation going. Several sections of this book explain why these assumptions are not necessarily true, and to show how just about anyone can start a podcast that works well for its intended purpose. The series also aims to provide the reader with a concise presentation of each topic that is comprehensive enough to serve as a reference guide, compact enough for the busy reader, conversational to a degree that technical terms and intimidating topics, like speaking to large audiences or feeling uncomfortable about one's voice, are rendered more relatable, and sufficiently authoritative and instructive that the reader truly walks away with a new skill, or at least a new perspective. Podcasting Explained 2.0 is not only current, but it puts podcasting into a historical perspective by talking about its relationship to early radio broadcasts, ham radio, pirate radio, and the early developments of the podcast itself. Unlike the first edition, which included a detailed tutorial section on how to build and distribute your podcast, this book focuses more on exploring the value of podcast for business, charities, and the political worlds, updated social media integration, and key takeaways. Podcasts are conceptually very interesting creatures. They constitute content as well as a medium in and of themselves. Put very simply, the podcast is a digital audio file made available on the internet for downloading to a computer or mobile device. They are often available as a series, or new installments of which can be received by subscribers automatically. They are not fully subject to broadcast rules and regulations. They can be as short or as long as desired. They can feature one or multiple hosts. Upload and distribution can be as frequent as the author chooses. The author, in fact, is referred to as the podcaster. Podcasts were new and fresh when they became a thing in the early to middle 2000s. These definitely were not broadcasts, and therefore there was a sense of unexplored territory and an almost Wild West and occasionally rebellious feel to them. In a way, podcasts at that time reminded me of a film I had seen in 1990, called Pump Up the Volume, starring Christian Slater in the main role. The story centers around a teenage pirate radio DJ who uses his shortwave equipment to piggyback on the public radio airwaves. He broadcasts late each evening, with freewheeling programs that lasted from 5 minutes to literally hours. His content featured anything from music to profane rants and even some nightly fabricated sexual content. The movie explored a lot of other deeper issues. At its core, it was about finding a voice. The character in that film chose pirate radio to find his voice. Podcasts, especially in their earlier days, were similar in many ways. Basically a medium to produce and share content, free of conventional rules, as a way of finding and using one's voice, of achieving validation and empowerment. Some things have changed since those early days. There are still many professional creativity houses and studios that produce podcasts. The one thing, however, that enthusiasts like me really hoped would materialize was the broadening effect, the democratization of the podcast. Production techniques and software are infinitely simpler than they were. Technical know-how no longer requires a college curriculum in audio engineering. Costs of production and distribution can be as low as the price of, say, a few bottles of good Chardonnay, or even less. Today there are dozens of streaming platforms and associated apps that can help build, host, and distribute your podcast. One of the biggest changes is in the widespread availability of monetization, often using a model that is shared in varying degrees by many online publishers of independent content. The biggest change since those nascent days is today's reliance on mobile technology, the smartphone. So, circling back to the question posed at the outset of this section, another book on podcasting? Absolutely. The value added with Podcasting Explained 2.0 is in the contextualization of the podcast as a form of content, of communication, and as a medium, as well as in the exploration throughout this book of the concepts of empowerment and of finding one's voice. But it all started with a microphone, which appropriately opens up the next chapter.
Podcasting Explained, the audiobook, is a production of Henley Point. For more information visit henleypoint.ca.